Welcome to the Code of Entry podcast, where we cloud the issues with facts and help you upskill to stay on the digital edge. Here's your host, Greg, with the latest.
Hey team, Greg here with another Code of Entry podcast. Got Keri joining me again today. So today we're going to talk about how to get started into programming. So it dawned on us, we've been doing work, coordinating with other companies like, hey, how do I get people educated on programming? How do I do an intro to programming? I take courses on Udemy on intro to web development, and I always gush over Udemy, right? But they update the courses all the time, right? So it's always, you can stay relevant, you can stay front of mind on whatever the new technology is. But as we were looking at it, I was like, this would be a good podcast topic, because I think there's a gap in understanding of what you need to know for programming if you want to apply it commercially and not just solve a problem. And I think that's one of those like academic kind of things that you miss if you're just like, yeah, I'm in school, I'm in a computer science program, or hey, I'm working at a company and I'm using credentialing assistance and I want to add another language under my belt. Well, why? How do you go from end to end and make the whole architecture? There are very few real full stack developers. And so just talking about, okay, how can I get started? How can I use the full stack here and get going? To not belabor it too much, I think the way that I would lay it out is really into 5 or 6 sections. Go over at high level first, and then we can dig in a little deeper. But first would just be an introduction, like what is coding, and maybe your foundations. Hey, what is a CPU? What is a terminal? What's an IDE? Just getting you oriented to what we're talking about, computer programming, just like basics of computer science, not too much. Then going into, hey, let's start with web development. Let's start on the front end. And I have an unscripted question. Hey, Keri, how good is your web development?
Subpar. I need GUIs. I need user interfaces to drag and drop and make pretty things. I can make pretty things. I have done that in the past. I have more artistic background.
Yeah, master's in data science and HTML, CSS, JavaScript.
No.
Okay, so
I was forced to use it when there's an Air Force tech sergeant that said, you need to update X, Y, or Z. And so I went through, he went and showed me all of the different components that I needed to do it on my workspace. So I learned on the job, but no formal education, no college degrees for that. Learn it as you go, which is a little bit of what we're talking about, is programming, and you're going to learn as you go, depending on what kind of topic you have to try to solve.
Yeah, I would start there. So I would start some front end stuff, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. We'll come back in more detail in a second. And then I would try to dive into Python. I think Python's a very high level language. It's a good place to start. You can do most anything in Python. And then now with this data-centric approach a lot of companies want to take across industries, Python has really, I think, replaced R as the front runner. I think we might have talked about it before, but with the kind of adaptation and advancement of PySpark, the slowness that you got from Python on larger data sets because it was a high-level language, I think that kind of got replaced because you could use PySpark to use Spark to interrogate larger data sets. But then I would go to Python, so then turn it back. I know you know how to use R really well. Did you do any Python?
Yes. It's part of the requirements for some of the cyber jobs that you have within the Army. So they try to give you a couple different languages they want you to know. And I always highlight for folks, language is like any other language, whether it's programming or a foreign language, that you have to put the time and effort into maintaining that language. Yes, all great in 2017. 2024, I need a refresher so I can, if I go, get a couple hours where I'm not being bothered by other things, phone calls or other stuff, I can get back into it pretty quick.
Yeah, between GPT or a Copilot or just regular Google, we're all going to use that anyway. So the interesting thing about Python, and again, more depth in a second, is just going to be, hey, it's very high level. So once you learn one language and how it really works, and I'll say programming language, because JavaScript before probably falls into that much more than HTML does. But once you learn one, it becomes an exercise in Google and, hey, what are all the packages? What are all the functions? How can I use this? And Google is your friend. Stack Overflow.
Stack Overflow is my best friend.
Your best friend, I think, has been replaced if you start using GPT. I'm just throwing it out there.
I've been dabbling in it recently, but yes.
Yeah. All right. So keep going. What's after Python? Okay. We started with, I need to be able to show things on a front end. Then we were like, okay, I need to be able to do some computations. Next is, okay, what happens when something's not just one session? I need to be able to save data. I need to be able to do CRUD, create, read, update, delete. So that's databases. I need to be able to save and access database. So I would move on to databases and start talking about some things like SQL, no SQL, which doesn't mean no SQL. It means not only SQL, just throwing it out there. And then saying, hey, okay, once I've got this database and I can save data, how can I query the data? Then once I query it, how can I get it back and use it to visualize? Bring everything full circle back to your front end, your functionality, your back end time together. I think databases really becomes your last piece of a core of a program. Then last will be, I would say I'd add a section on like how to do headless stuff. So headless means there's no graphical user interface. So it'd be like, hey, open up that scary black screen and be able to use command line interface programs. And how do you navigate around your computer? Can I open windows? Can I close windows? Can I use Mac has this thing in the terminal where you just say and you put in a sentence and it's all fun because the computer will read it to you. But you get comfortable in the command line interface because that's really, I think, when you get next level. As I line that out, I like to also point out to people that when you're going to take a course, a lot of folks are like, oh, I just took this one course. Okay, that's great. I took a 1 week course. It was just a week-long thing. I'm not very good. A 1 week, 40-hour course is the exact same amount of time in a classroom as a full semester course. Mind blown? So let's just say that I taught at a university once upon a time.
Okay, we'll say that.
55-minute lessons.
Okay.
40 lessons. Some of those lessons were like tests. Some were case studies and projects. So you don't get the baked in homework time, but like as far as assisted instruction, like you can get a lot out of a 40-hour course. So there's people that'd be like, so I would propose this for a 40-hour course. And I think I'd get pushback from some folks being like, that's too many things.
This is too many things.
Totally not.
It depends on how much for your audience, what they need to digest. If they already have a good foundation, it'll go quick. If you're going to be spelling out Python for the first time for them, maybe a little longer.
So let's have that debate. We'll go back through what I think the sections are, and you can tell me if I've lost my mind or not.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to skip the intro-y stuff. That's just, hey, this is how we code. This is how computers work. Let's just all agree that's going to be a quick high-level thing because you don't really need to know how things are read and written into memory. If you understand it, good for you. If you don't, you can still code. At least get started. All right, so first, I'm like, okay, I'd go HTML, and I'd have this quick start file that we could review. Be like, hey, this is what an HTML file looks like. First, you need to put this snippet of code at the top so that your interpreter, your browser knows that it's HTML. Then you need a header, and then you need a title, then you need the body, then you need the footer. And here's how you build some stuff. And I think what I would do first is I'd be like, hey, this is how you get things on the screen in HTML. Okay, awesome. Let's add some content. These are some pictures. These are some header tags. These are title tags. These are paragraphs. This is how you make something bold, italic, underline. Just kind of some of those basics. And then be like, remember, HTML is like for the gross structure and layout basics of your site. That's it. You with me so far?
I'm with you, yeah.
Okay. Then I would be like, all right, here's CSS, cascading style sheets. They can get super complex. This is an introduction course. So I'm a fan of people don't know what they don't know. Once something exists, you can Google it and you can find videos on YouTube. But if you don't know that cascading style sheets are a thing, you don't even know where to start looking. Introductory course. All right. So we go and we say, hey, this is a style sheet. This is how you can style things inline. This is how you can, which we talked about when I was like bold, underline, italic. This is how you can make a style sheet. This is how you can apply a style sheet to multiple files. Here's how you make it efficient. Here's what you Google to go find the different things. Okay, I want to know how to use CSS to center and bold my header. Okay, great. Too easy. You'll know exactly how to do it. And then the next is the JavaScript part, which is by far the hardest thing. But I think it's the, how do you do something? And so then you say, hey, you click a button and I want an alert to come up. You click a button, I want to be able to execute some function, change something on the screen, make a sound, whatever. So we go from laying out the page to making the page look pretty to making the page do something. Boom. First kind of full featured section there, HTML. We're talking 5 full days. We could do that for half a day and make a lab for half a day. And I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, especially using some existing ones. Cheat sheets help as well.
Yeah. And I think maybe a prerequisite I didn't state, but again, if I'm trying to get the most out of the instruction, I don't want to make this an exercise in how to configure your environment. So I want to give you instructions on how you can do that, but I don't want to waste instruction time on that. So I think it's the, hey, everybody come in. Here's how you log into your AWS workspace or your other virtual desktop. It is pre-configured. Open VS Code. Okay, now double click this file, that'll open in Chrome. Have it all set up so that when a student comes in, they can start using the tools. They can get familiar with them, comfortable with them, and then you can give them instructions on how to download it themselves and set it up. But don't waste a lot of time trying to configure an environment because there's no telling what rabbit hole you can go down.
I agree.
That was profound. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that's that first chapter, right? And JavaScript would really be your first adventure into what a programming language is, because the add-ons to JavaScript is you start talking about, okay, are we talking about Angular or Node or Vue? And don't get me on React Native, React. So it opens a lot of possibilities. But the reason I start there is because I really feel like it's the most important. And that's, super debatable. Because what is the number one thing that an end user wants out of a computer program?
Something swoopy.
Something swoopy, yes. So swoopy is a technical term, also defined as pretty or sexy. When somebody looks at your application, okay, they're going to hope that they can trust it. And hopefully there's been an evaluation that whatever is being displayed on the screen is accurate, but they're looking for a wow factor. There's a lot of money to be made from a wow factor. You can go through with the other things we'll talk about here and you can make this awesome database, or you can use a crappy database. You can do some kung fu data science, or you can do something really simple. If you can sell it in a pretty visualization, you're golden. And that's a frustration as a technologist with senior leaders in organizations is they don't have any idea what's under the hood. Is it pretty? Yeah, I want that. So I'm overpaying for underperforming stuff, right? The evil empires of the Palantirs, whose secret sauce under the hood is not that good, but it's pretty.
It is pretty.
Yeah, making hundreds of millions of dollars because it's pretty. Is it the best thing? No, but it's pretty. Killing me, Smalls. Yeah, sorry. I'm going to get off the Palantir soapbox, but just an example. Okay, great. I can make things pretty now. So let's focus on how do I get the information to make it pretty? Do I always have to know it ahead of time? No. You can calculate it. You can do cool things. You can get information from that JavaScript and pass it to your programs and then output something back using the DOM, the document object model. I didn't mention that. That's something that should be briefly mentioned in the HTML part. It's complex, but you can use JavaScript to dynamically edit anything that's on the page through the DOM. So then you step to Python. And I think Python's a good first programming language. How would you rate it for ease of use, learnability? Do you have it high, low?
I have it high. High for a user and getting access and starting. It's a good starting point, jumping off point, right? It's applicable to a lot of different domains. So diving into that one first and then just building off of that I think it's a good way to go. There's a couple other programming language, but that one's been around for a while, and it's actually has a lot of libraries. There's been a lot of investment, so it's pretty stable.
Yeah, and man, as we've gone through the years, I still use a lot of PHP. I don't know how PHP has survived as long as it has, but it's much harder to use and much more niche, I'll say limited, than something like a Python. Because with Python, there's a package for everything. There are front-end packages, so maybe you don't have to deal with HTML as much directly, or JavaScript probably more apt, but you'd still have to get towards some of that styling stuff. But you can do data science. And for a long time, I was an R fan for data science. I think you probably learned R in your program.
R or Python.
Yeah.
I'm still an R fan. If you do want to do like statistics and you want to get more than just data exploration or visualization, yes. I'm still like, we need to maintain R. Don't let it go away.
Yeah.
It has a purpose. Let it do its purpose.
So I agree that it has a purpose. I'm not sure that it still has as much purpose as it used to. It just depends on which community is using something. If you have a math person doing purely statistics, but if you're a programmer, it's probably easier just to jump into Python. And I say this being a guy, we talk about like 40-hour courses being a semester. That's taken semester-long courses on R. That's taken 80-hour trainings and taught courses that are taught in R, right? I'm very comfortable in R. If I had to log in right now and start doing a box plot, I'm doing it in R. Most people are probably still going to Python though. So I think Python's a better place to start for development in general because it's a very friendly language.
The barrier is lower. You can be a data analyst. You can just want to explore the data. You just want to do some trends, do some histograms, something over time, right? It's there.
Yep.
You don't need to have a statistics background to start using Python.
Yeah. And we're being very data focused. It's not the way I would probably teach it. So I'd probably do something like, and I say data, maybe with some extra air quotes. So I'd probably start first with saying, hey, let's do a first program. I don't want to teach you all the fundamentals of Python. I'm doing an introductory course to get you good enough to be able to Google and learn more later. This is continuing education based because you're not going to remember it. I need to get you access and exposure to as many topics as possible so that you're maybe a C, so that you can Google it and figure it out and learn and be more valuable to your organization. If you focus on one deep thing and get really good at the exercise I gave you, you're not going to be able to translate that to something, in my opinion. We go, okay, let's make sure that you can get in, you have Python working, and the difference between typing Python and putting Python or Python 3 in, how do you get that in your IDE? How do I work with variables? Once I can use some different variables, okay, great. What about strings? What about F strings? Then great. I know how the variables work. I know how to store information. Then how do I get inputs? So how do I get the user to put in information so I didn't have to know it ahead of time? Once I get inputs, I can then work on the outputs, whether that's printing or returning back to a function to go somewhere else. And once I can print, then I'm really manipulating things between numbers and the F strings and concatenating things. And I can do anything at that point, at least when we're talking about like the web UI. Okay, let's put that together. Let's make a calculator of some sort, whether it's a servings calculator or an investment calculator or a physical fitness calculator. Let's make some form of calculator because that's an easy way to say, hey, I've got to get input, got to get output. This is my math. I don't have to do a bunch of complex stuff, but I understand the process flow. Okay, hang on with me. We're not done. So far we haven't had to use a lot of packages. We also haven't had to use a lot of logic. So then I'm going to be like, okay, let's do logic. What if there could be multiple conditions? So let's do some ifs, some if-else's. Let's see about loops. Then maybe randomizations, whether it's heads or tails or making a list and putting it in random order, whatever. And then I think you've got a pretty good understanding of the foundations of a programming language, kind of in action, using Python to get there. And then we can talk about the versatility of Python because we haven't done anything in there that's really data analysis, that's web presentation, that's, oh, I need to use Django or Flask, or hey, we need to download pandas or anything else we're talking about, PySpark from earlier, all things that make Python, that extend Python. So then let's start talking about packages and libraries just at a high level. How do I pull in a package? How do I use it? Why are they awesome?
How do I trust those packages or those libraries?
Yeah, I was going to ignore that for most of this talk.
No.
Yeah, I know. But it's a very important point. So we go back to HTML, CSS. Those are pretty trustworthy because I'm going to write most of that. And it's really easy to scan through. You get into JavaScript and Python, both of those you can use packages and libraries, and they're written by other people. And they do awesome things. And they could do awesome things you don't know about, and they could be awesome for somebody else, but not you. So you can make things and introduce vulnerabilities. So I think as we go into, okay, how would I address that in a course? That would be like briefly in the intro, and then in the conclusion to the course, it would be like, all right, look, we gave you a lot of power, but with great power becomes great responsibility, go Spider-Man style. And like when you use a package, you need to know if it's trustworthy or not. How are you going to know? You need to get it from an authoritative place. What about if you're going to use it in production? It's not good enough to trust. You have to trust and verify.
Yeah.
And how do you verify? Security expert, Keri Fischer.
No, there's a couple ways. You can put the libraries here and try to scan it, but even if it's just like a starting point, like, what does this library do? Who maintains this library? Do I recognize this handle that maintains this library? Is it US based? Is it foreign based? Go down that pathway first, and then even before you get to a point where like, all right, I want to know if I need to run it through for security. Okay, you can get to that point, but don't waste your time prior to that if you realize there's a Russian hacker that's been creating this library. Probably not a good one to use.
Yeah, I remember, a decade ago, I was helping do some development on an Android project, and the private enterprise that was using these devices was like, oh yeah, we route the phones so that we have complete control of the device, and then we reflash them for what we want them for, and we put our apps on. So, okay, that's cool. Are there any instructions? Oh, no. Okay, made instructions. I love Excel, by the way.
It's a true statement.
The people in my life joke that it's like my love language. Some people, it's messages of affirmation or touch. Mine is things in Excel. So I made a list in Excel. It took 103 steps to figure out when I documented how to do this. But it killed me because when I started going, I'm like, okay, first thing I got to do is I've got to crack this phone. Yeah, Eastern European unverified development account to crack all these devices. And that way it was rooted to then put your important applications on and give them to everybody in your enterprise. Wait, we're doing what? Are you serious? So just due diligence. Take a look. If you're learning and you're playing, sometimes it's not that big a deal. As soon as you start thinking about putting this on a device that isn't your test device, you got to worry about it.
Yep. Just like any other source, you want to have confidence in wherever you're getting it from so you can do that lineage. If you can find a good library and maybe there's already been a commitment of a more secure version of those libraries available, then that's great. That's when you can go to known repos for that. But if you're going to try it out, it's just like anything else.
And then just to give you the Googleability here, it's, you're talking about SonarQube, Fortify, Trufflehog, any of the scans like that. CI/CD pipelines, continuous integration and continuous delivery or continuous deployment. CI/CD. So you can look up any of those and just start, hey, professional development practices. How do I secure my applications? And that's a good thing, but that's not necessarily, it's not a beginner topic, but it's a topic that you have to know as a beginner. And it has to be, as you get more advanced and you do things in production, you have to worry about it in every phase of your life cycle. Okay, she got us in left field, but it was a very good left field. It should be center field, the security there. All right, so then I'm going to go, and we still have 2 sections left in this course, and we're not going to talk about security for nearly that long in the section. So now I'm going to get into databases. Okay, generally what happens in databases, you create, read, update, delete. So you go over some basics first, and you say, hey, I made a simple application. What if we wanted to save that? Let's say I made a log. I've been into golf lately. I made a log for every time I hit my driver. I want to know whether it was left, right, long, or short. I want to know if it was, how far it was. I want to know if it was in the fairway, and if I would have called it a good or bad shot. Why not? Okay, great. I'm going to create a simple use case where it's in one table. And I'm going to be able to take every time that I put that in my app in Python and I hit enter, that it saves it as a line, and I can enter a new one, and I can enter a new one, I can enter a new one. I want some basic summary statistics on it. Hey, your average drive is, you're horrible. Sorry, horrible for me. You're only hitting your driver 225 yards. Cool, man, what am I doing?
It's double mine.
Sorry. But, and you're hitting it short left every time. I'm like, okay. Not the point of this conversation. That's why I would want to know that. Okay, how do I display that back? So now I've built on that. I've used my database. I've used some Python, and I'm putting it back in section 1. Okay, so that's super simple. We're doing it in one table. Then we'll talk a little bit about database types. We can talk about kind of relational databases and really the power of stuff like MySQL and Postgres, because they're free and they're really widespread. Most web servers out there will have MySQL and PHP on them, so you can do a lot. And it's okay, great. How do I do that? Then how do you use the graphical user interface to make it? And then some basics on, okay, how does SQL work? And with SQL, again, just talking about it. So you know what to Google later, or you know what book to go get. So with SQL, like basic, hey, I want to insert something. I want to update something. I want to delete something. So create, read, update, delete. I'd probably also do data input, like data imports, so that you would know, okay, I have this spreadsheet. Instead of having a spreadsheet that's only available to me, I want to make it in my program. Okay, hey, you can do that. What's an import thing? So now you've got importing data, you've got some query basics, you've got some ability to create, read, update, delete. It's really about data persistence, and I haven't used the word persistence yet. That's about data persistence, because everything we've done before isn't persistent, or it's not dynamic. It's hard to get dynamic persistence unless you add a database in. Okay, awesome. So we've got this database thing. What am I going to completely whiff over in my mind? It's going to be an explanation of the difference between SQL and NoSQL, other than to mention that, hey, there are things, and based off the information you have, you might want to use different data structures, because I think you can go down a whole, and we're going to have a follow-on podcast about data literacy. I think that becomes a data literacy topic, other than, hey, here's a handout. Like, you can use key value pairs. We can use document stores. You could be putting this in Elastic or HDFS or Cumulo or whatever, but I think if you introduce too many databasey things, the average person, tables in MySQL or Postgres or relational database tables will resonate because they look like Excel. So it's a really easy way to get started. Any thoughts on sticking to the table structure?
Creating some of the databases or tables from scratch. If you're going to start brand new, I would think it was like every other time when I would ask myself a question of the data, I'd realize I was missing a column that needed to be that I should have been collecting, or I should have been entering in, or I should have been running some sort of statistic on it, and just not knowing it, or like, oh, I put the date time group in wrong and it's in Eastern time instead of UTC. Like the amount of things that I went back to, like every time I would get to a point where I'm like, hey, I'm going to see this visualization, going back to it and be like, oh, I'm missing this part of the data. But it doesn't occur to me until after I start to try to visualize it that I'm missing core things out of it. So starting from scratch is hard. Starting with a good one that you can import a good table from, like you talked about, is probably the best way to go about an initial orientation to what we're talking about, and then growing from there. Otherwise, you're just frustrated. It's my life in 2008.
Yeah, and I see this, and we're at like the last of the course sections of what I would recommend as an intro course. And I do the intro this way really because I see it as a sequence of, hey, in the first thing that I teach you, I don't want to be too theoretical. I also don't want to be too deep and specific. I want to give you a wide range of topics and enough that you can get interested in what we're talking about and become that lifelong learner. I don't want to give you, hey, here's how you can make a pretty page, but nothing changes. I don't want to be like, oh, hey, here's how you can do some really cool stuff in the background, but then you don't have a way to show anybody. Oh, yeah, by the way, you can't save any of those results. So it's just kind of building on those together so that kind of end to end how these things work. Because guess what? You probably, if you want to be a front-end person, then you need to take some specific courses or lessons on front-end development. If you want to be a Python wizard, you're going to need to go in and learn more Python. Or maybe it's a different language because you want to go do video game development. Okay, great. You can go do Objective-C or C# or whatever based on your platform.
No, I got one for this. I signed my 12-year-old up for Roblox coding at one of the local universities for 5 days. So she's going to go through a whole semester, as you would put it.
See?
A whole semester. And then you can check the box if you want them to group with the basic users, or maybe they're power users already, at least in the form. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and the cool thing too is going to be, while it's a specific thing, they don't know anything. So they're going to get some pre-made templates. They're going to get just enough to do so that they can feel value in what they're doing and they're building their interest. They're not going to come make I know nothing about Roblox. They're not going to make their own Roblox thing.
They might.
When they get home.
I hope so.
Unless they are Googling stuff. So hopefully they learn enough that it's sustainable and they don't learn, hey, I can make this one car and all I can do now is make these cars.
No, I think it's going to be closer to creating an environment that they can host folks onto that part of the game. So we'll see. But yes. The other part I wanted to say is when we have like orientation outline, giving them positive encouragement, and so to avoid any of the frustrations that we've gone through in the past. At least there's an acknowledgement of, hey, don't get frustrated. We'll talk through whatever it is, so you don't give up on the coding part or give up on the visualization. You're just like, it's too hard. I'm out. Hard pass.
Yeah, and I think two answers that I would have to that is that's why we keep it high level.
Mm-hmm.
But make it so that everything we're talking about builds on it, so you can see why you're going to need to learn more, or you can decide what you're interested in, what you would use more. If you want to specialize front end, back end, hey, full stack, I want to do it all. Great, but you get some perspective up front instead of going all in on this and only doing back end stuff for a career and going super deep, and you can do something that's an inch wide and you're pigeonholed where you would have really enjoyed something, but you didn't know, or you get frustrated and you quit because it wasn't what you wanted to do. So I think that's on one side. On the other side, it goes to the kind of the last section of the course that I would put as a conclusion, which I term as like intimidating topics. And that's really just talking about, hey, let's talk about the terminal. Because if you're programming and you're still doing things in a GUI, there are a lot of people that are computer dorks that'll throw you much shade if you do everything in a GUI. There's definitely people that just leave a terminal up and they're like, I don't know why you use the GUI. It's so slow. I'm not there. But it's, hey, how do I navigate files? How do I make a folder, maker? How do I create a file, touch? And there's some easy things you can show them. Just be like, hey, don't be intimidated by the terminal. This is how it's laid out. If you go to a web page and it's, hey, you can install this program by putting this one-line command in, or you can spend the next 15 minutes clicking on all these things. It'll give you the opportunity to maybe consider cutting and pasting the one curl command or wget or whatever it's formatted in and hitting enter.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because I remember starting at Army Cyber Command. And I sat down next to a guy and wrote terminal commands down into Excel in a list. Because I'm like, all right, what does this mean? What does this mean? And as I look back at it now, I'm like, I was copying a file from one directory to another and then downloading it. And it took me like 2 months of copying and pasting like these Excel commands because nobody really explained what I was doing to me. And I was just like, yeah, this, and then do this and do this. They were just way over my head. And then when I finally got it, it's like I never had to look back at my sheet again. Because I'm like, oh, this is easy because the way that these commands are formatted, this will always work. So I think some of those basics will demystify the advanced topics enough that they're not as scary. So I would say, hey, let's talk about that black screen. That's the terminal. And then show you, hey, you can actually download other terminals so you look cool. And then how do you navigate your machine? And then some of these command line interface programs. Hey, you can do your Python coding directly in the terminal if you want. You just want to test out something and see if it works. Hey, just do it in the terminal. That would be like my last topic. If I were to go through, we're talking, hey, I just want to talk high level we're going to embark on this journey of coding. And we're going to talk about a few different things in a 40-hour setting, which is one semester class. And I'm going to show you a little bit about the front end, how to do some programming, how to do data persistence and databases, tie it all together. And then, hey, the icing on the cake at the end is a little bit separate on how to use the command line so that as you delve deeper into any one of those things, that's probably going to come up in a tutorial. It's probably going to come up in how you set up your environment. Some of the stuff that we hand wave because we're going to provide you cheat sheets and we're going to provide you environments and we're going to try to make sure that you can get this breadth of experiences. We can help you get towards the next step by demystifying the command line. And that's how I would do it. So 40 hours, intro to programming, right there. All right, am I off my rocker? What did I forget? What am I supposed to do that we didn't talk about, or why won't that work, Keri? You're the realist. I'm the optimistic person. I'm always like, hey, that's too easy. We got this.
It's too easy. That should be your quote in your new signature block. It's too easy. No, I think it's all on track. I think the big piece is you have variations of the types of talent that are going to attend beginner level courses. And at the end of the course, you'll find folks that really will have more talent that want to go further and use these tools above and beyond what we're going to just teach them from the beginner side and visualization of any of the data. So using any of the command lines, using any of the programs, some folks are going to go all in and start wanting to do more cyber operations type of perspectives. It's a core component of if you're feeling good about it and you like it, and then everyone has the talent to do it, then maybe they're going to move on to more things other than this particular programming for visualization purposes. Going to look at it for programming for exploitation purposes, as an example. It's a good feeder.
Yeah, and I like staying high level because once you start going deep, you can lose people. You can take a lot of time. And if you're going to trust that somebody is going to be the lifelong learner that they're going to put into their education, and that's honestly a pro of it not being at a college semester course because, hey, intro to programming could be the mandatory computer science class that an art major has to take or whatever is, hey, I'm setting people up to do this that are probably interested already and they just need to know where to get started. And this kind of gives them that traction to get started, learn themselves, give them some buzzwords. But then, hey, if you want to be a front-end developer, start doing more web development stuff. If you want to be a back-end person, learn more about databases. Let's dive into NoSQL. Hey, why would I use Elastic instead of Postgres, for example? And hey, we could go down all those rabbit holes and and the problem is if you don't line that out ahead of time, you can lose sight of getting to your objective of, hey, I want to create a well-rounded understanding programming. You end up going too deep in too many places. You don't get to where you wanted to go, or it takes too long. So again, I think, you stay high level because it's an intro course, but you equip people to be able to deliver after they leave your course instead of being like, hey, we're going to make a Hello World tutorial and it's going to be super deep. No, because then all they're going to be able to do is make Hello World.
Hello World.
Hello World. Okay. I think next time, we might have some other podcasts in the middle here, but we'll come back. And I think as we talked about this, one of the things that we should probably cover is data literacy, because I'm trying to stay like maybe programming education level, and you always shoot straight to like all the data concepts and the Voltus principles and how you're going to access the data and how you're going to secure the data. And yes, it is all about the data, but I think that's a different topic than where you get started. So I think that'd be an interesting podcast, and then you can take lead and I'll sit here and listen to you and give color commentary, and that'll be interesting.
That will be entertaining, I believe, for folks.
Awesome. So appreciate everybody listening. If you're an aspiring programmer and you're interested in learning any of these topics, feel free to reach out. We have an online course that you can take on any of this stuff, or we can direct you to our favorite Udemy channels or whatnot. Always happy to help people keep learning. That's what this is about, is how do you upskill? How do you stay relevant? And if you already know about all these topics, I would encourage you to at least look them up again every 6 to 12 months, because technology changes so much that it's really hard to keep up. For a long time, I was an R groupie. I will say I think Python has supplanted it as the kind of premium data science experience, but stuff changes over time. And it's hey, what computer should you use? Hey, what cloud vendor should you use? It all changes, right? Shoot, cloud vendors. I was looking at it today, and I think Oracle recently got their classified cloud up and running. Hey, there was a time just a couple of years ago, I've been like, you're talking about Oracle in the cloud? Irrelevant. And it's not the case anymore. So we're in this space where technology rapidly evolves. We know Moore's law that things are exponentially increasing. Oh, wait, large language models just went mainstream. And holy crap, research and development times, I think, really got crashed. So they're going to be accelerated quite a bit. And I was in the middle of signing off there, and one thought that's going to hit me is going to be, why take the deep class 2 right at the beginning when there are large language models that can do a lot of this?
You're going to trust what you're going to try to use. It's probably better if you want to try to evaluate what's being available or what's being created based off a good baseline. So I still think if you can find tools that will help you do the job faster, get you answers faster with a high confidence level, 100% all in. Understanding the fundamental questions to ask is the biggest piece, right?
Yeah, bingo.
Still need both.
Yeah, spot on, because the thing that you'll find, and if you're listening to this, chances are you've started using ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever your choice is prompt engineering is where it's at now. You need to be able to write a prompt to ask for what you want and be as specific as possible, and you'll get great results back. You don't know what you don't know. In an intro course, being deep enough so that you can Google is also deep enough so you can engineer prompts. Awesome. I'm glad that fell out here at the end. Appreciate everybody's time and coming to the Code of Entry podcast. Until the next one, keep hustling.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Code of Entry and online at codeofentry.com. Check back for new episodes or join the team by signing up for notifications. Until next time, keep hustling.